Good morning, everybody. I haven't had the opportunity of preaching here on a Sunday for a few weeks, and so it's great to be back this morning. Jax did a fantastic job last week with loaves and 2 fish, which defrosted and got refrozen and got used again at the evening meeting for those that were here last Sunday morning. Brilliant message. It really was fantastic. And I'd like to echo Geordie's welcome that if you are visiting, new to town, or maybe you last came to church here a long time ago, welcome back. And welcome for the first time if you're here for the first time. And just hope you have a wonderful Sunday with us and that God does something deep in your heart. How many people were here for our Vision weekend yesterday on Saturday? How many were able to make it? It was fantastic. For those that weren't here, we had a really amazing time from 8 through till 2 yesterday morning. And got a whole lot of feedback of different things that are happening in the church, not all of which I have time to do this morning. And the verses that we spoke from, which are related to our theme for the weekend, was John 1 and John 14. Jesus said, you will see greater things. And then he also said, you will do greater things. You will see greater things and you will do greater things. And I hope that in your heart, as it is in mine for this year, 2019, that we're saying, God, we don't want to have normal. We don't want to have the same that we had the previous year or the last few years. We want to see greater things. And we want to do greater things. So this series that we're running today, next week, and 3 weeks' time is called Engage at the beginning of the year to help us click in and to help us get our thoughts around that idea of how we can see greater things and how we can do greater things. My title for this morning, if I was to give it one, would be this, is Living a Life of Purpose. Living a life of purpose. We celebrated some babies this morning, their births, and in my family, my brother and my sister, Beth, who's married to a guy named Greg, in the last 3 months, they've each had babies as well. So just before Christmas, and my brother Tim, that was his 3rd child, so we celebrated the entrance of little Joel into the world. He didn't make it to the Christmas dinner that we had. He was being babysat, and we were then questioning my brother and sister-in-law, why did he get left out of his first Christmas meal? Of course, he was a tiny little tot, still is. And so Joel has been added to the Wimble family. And then my sister, Beth, was pregnant through Christmas and knew that the birth of her child would fall somewhere in early January. I thought it might have landed on my birthday, which is the 10th of Jan. My dad, my late father, it would have been his 72nd birthday on the 9th of January. I'm going somewhere with this story. It's not just family history. So my dad was born on the 9th of January, 1947. And this year would have been his 72nd birthday, except he passed away some years back. So my sister's pregnant with this little human being. We don't know what gender it is. They hadn't shared that with the family. And on the 9th of January, what would have been my dad's birthday, she goes into labor and gives birth to a little boy, 72 years after my dad was born, on his birthday. And then her and her husband, Greg, decided to call the little guy after my dad, his grandfather. So his name is Andrew, little Andrew Taylor, born on my dad's birthday. So on my birthday, we zooted up to go and meet little Andrew, this little guy. And this is where I'm headed with this story. He is not aware of it yet because he's still developing. But these 2 little guys, Joel and Andrew, added to my extended family, they're brand new into this world. But they're not brand new to God. He knew of them. He knew of their existence before the world began. He knew that they would be born at this time, that they'd be alive. And he has designed a life of purpose for them to live. So the new Andrew, he's just getting going. He's just a couple of weeks old, and he's got a life ahead of him, and he gets to choose how much of that purpose he walks into. The old Andrew, my father, he got his one shot at life. He was born in 1947. He passed away 4 or 5 years ago. I have the date somewhere. But he passed away a little while ago. He had a shot, 67 odd years of life, and then God called him home. So what we do with this one life really matters. I can't think about that enough or try and emphasize it enough. You and I just got one shot, one life. When I was born on the 10th of January in the last millennium, I've got this one life to live. And I get to make the choices of how much of God's purpose I step into. I also get to make the choices of how much of my own thing I choose to do and kind of wander along the paths that God didn't design for me. Some of you may have come across this term, YOLO. Y-O-L-O, you only live once. And in pop culture, that's used as a reason to do stupid things. Oh, well, you only live once, and go and do something death-defying. But in the best possible sense of God's design for us, it's a good idea to have YOLO right at the front of our mind. You only live once. God gave us this life. My nephew is just starting. My dad had his shot. I'm here, I'm in the middle. We're here, we're living. And what are we doing with that? How are we living this life on purpose? There was a guy named Joshua. There's a whole book of the Bible written after him, named by his name. And he was a leader of the nation of Israel. He was a general that kind of led the troops and led the entire nation. Extraordinary story related to the book of Joshua. And through all of his lifetime, the people of Israel, they follow God. And they kind of go from where they were into the land of Canaan, modern day Israel, and that was God's promise to them, was that land, and they inhabited it, had to fight a few battles to get there. Right at the end of the book of Joshua, he's now well advanced in years, and they've fought most of the battles. There's still some left to fight, but he gathers the nation together, and he has a heart-to-heart with them on what their future is going to look like. And of course, there's a lot of younger people now that have come in this time of all these years of fighting. And Joshua gives an impassioned plea to the people of Israel. And this is what he says in Joshua chapter 24. He says, now fear the Lord. You want to live a life on purpose? Fear God and serve him with all faithfulness. This is Joshua's message to the nation. He says, throw away the gods your ancestors worship beyond the river Euphrates and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. And that time, there was a lot of, as you'd see from this verse, a lot of different types of idolatry. He says you get the idols from beyond the river Euphrates, the idols from back in Egypt. Idols are still a problem. We just might call them by different names in different cultures. Then he says this in verse 15, he says, but if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, if you choose not to fear God and follow him, like I've just said, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve. You've got to make a choice, whether the gods your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. Just a little comment here about idols. We could put in a whole lot of names of idols in there. If Joshua was speaking into our context, into the city of Durban, he might say, you choose, are you going to serve self? Are you going to serve pleasure? You choose, you're going to serve the idol of your children, or of just having fun, or of doing enough, just your comfortable life, you, yourself, your little bubble. It says you choose who you want to serve, who you want to follow. And then he follows it with, I don't imagine, well, the part of me just wonders if he maybe thumped his fist down on whatever he was talking from. When he says in verse 15, he says, but as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. So I want to let you know what we've chosen to do. You choose, but as for me and as for my household, we've made this choice. We will serve the Lord. So this morning I'd like to, in speaking about this idea of living a life of purpose, I'd like to suggest this as the one big idea, and I've got a few numbered points to it. But want to live a life of purpose? Settle the core issues. There's two sides of the same coin. You want to live a life of purpose, God's purpose? Settle the core issues. Joshua says, make a choice. Settle some things. You choose. Draw a line in the sand. Elijah, another guy later on in the Old Testament, he also addressed the nation of Israel. in a time of great idolatry. And he said this as part of his message to the nation. He said, how long will you waver between two opinions? How long will you waver? Maybe we should do this. Yeah. Maybe we should do that. Yeah. Maybe we'll follow God. Then the tough times hit. You know what? We're going to go and look for other gods to help us get through these tough times. And Elijah just says, well, wait a minute. Let me make it easy. Make a choice. How long will you waver between these two things? If God is God, this is his message, 1 Kings 18. If God's God, serve him. And if Baal is God, the idols of those days, then serve him. But don't waver. Don't fence it. I'd like to suggest that one of the big choices all of us have to make, number one, is whether we will serve the Lord or not. Whether we'll serve the Lord or not. Yoris, I wonder if you could help get my stage prop out. Thank you for your help with that. Joshua said, as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. So every one of us have a decision to make in our lives. Are we going to serve God or not? You might be here this morning, and this whole idea is brand new to you, and I hope you stick with me as we get through the service. Oh, thank you. So this is a retreaded... Is that on? I meant to turn it off to cough surreptitiously. Sorry, spider. So this is a retreaded fence. I used it last year in speaking about fences and offenses. I'm using it today, and I just need you to use your imagination with me, as a brick wall, okay? About 5 of you are working with me there, judges. Okay, this pallet fence, for the sake of today's illustration, is a brick wall. So we waver, Elijah says, and Joshua says, between these two opinions. We've got these options. Do we serve God and follow him, or do we do all these other things? And, geez, something happens, and then, okay, I need to get back into church and pray and talk to God, and then things happen, and I get a bit distracted, and I go down this whole journey of finding myself, and that's called wavering, according to Elijah. I'm wavering between moving forwards and doing my own thing, using this illustration. At some point on these 5 core issues that I'm going to talk about this morning, I need to draw a line in the sand and mark out that line as the place to build a brick wall, because it's not just a line in the sand. I then need to go out and get a shovel, using a building illustration, and dig a trench and lay some good foundations on this wall, and then lay the bricks. And if you can imagine this fence being a wall, is by building the wall of a really good decision, I take away a whole lot of, really bad decisions. My throat's trying to jump in the way of this message. I build a wall, and I move forward from this point of decision. And I say, as for me and my household, if you have one, I'm using Joshua's words, we will serve the Lord. And so I walk forward figuring that out, and I might get beaten back a bit on some things, and I'm walking forward and I'm going backwards, and then some strong winds blow, and they blow me back just to the wall. And I might have some doubts in my head and some thoughts of, God, where were you in all of this stuff? And I'm wrestling with things. And then I feel, well, wait a minute. I settled something once for all. As for me, I'm serving God. This was the wall of that decision. Now, this verse of Joshua 24, verse 15, was one of my dad's favorite verses. When he first became a Christian, when he first became a Christ follower, started reading the Bible, he read this, and it was one of those verses that just became an anthem verse for him, the older Andrew. He loved it so much that he had a few plaques made over the course of his lifetime that he stuck up at various points of his house, our house. As for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Or ... Joshua 24, 15. When he passed away, he was cremated. My mom had been buried. And so we were given the option of putting his ashes into a special little memorial thingy on my mom's gravestone with his gravestone on there. And so while we were organizing it, the message came through of, did we want to add an inscription onto his gravestone at all? And you know that all 5 of us, myself and my 4 siblings, all of us could only think of one thing. If Dad had have put something, could have chosen it, I think he would have chosen Joshua 24, verse 15. Because this was the wall of a big decision that he made earlier on in his life, and that was a wall that stood him in good stead right to the end. And if you go to the place where his ashes are and that gravestone is, it's got written there, Joshua 24:15. And this verse, we will serve the Lord. This is a core issue that every one of us gets to settle. I said this morning, there might be some here that you're still trying to figure this whole thing out. And here's what I've observed, is there many people in figuring out the claims of Jesus and is there a God? And the Bible says he's placed eternity in our hearts. So there's a resonance in our hearts when we start seeking for the true God. And this resonance draws us close, but there's some things in real life that knock us back a little bit. We try and figure it out. And in the trying to figure things out, I've observed many people get distracted from building the wall of the decision. And they're like, okay, then something cropped up, and if we were just being busy, like, yeah, I'm going to come back to that. And a year becomes 2 years, becomes 3 years, becomes 4 years. And every now and then the thoughts go back to that. But I never go back to, okay, what wall am I building on this decision? Am I serving the Lord? To use Joshua's line, my dad's favorite verse. Or am I still a bit wafty on this whole thing and just kind of wherever the wind goes, I'm going along with that? You want to live a life of purpose that God has for you? Settle the core issues. Number 1 of, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Now, every individual has their own choice to make on that. But here's another comment about this wall, is one big yes equals 100 smaller no's. Okay? So work something like this. When I was at university, I remember all the varsity students around me complaining bitterly about how stressed out they were, how busy life was. But in reality, everybody just seemed to be having a whale of a time, and there's lots of time to do pretty much anything, because you just missed a few lectures here and there, or a few weeks of lectures if you chose to, but everybody felt like the pressure was on. Then there comes a point of making a big decision. Now, what am I going to do with my education? And guys go out and they get a job. So on a day, however the conversation happens, they get offered a job and they've got one big decision to make. And by saying yes to that one big decision, they say no to 100 smaller decisions. The big wall of the decision, I'm going to take up this job. Okay, I built the wall. Now suddenly I get working hours and a working week. And when I wake up on Monday morning, I don't have the option of going into the first 3 lectures or not, depending on how the weekend was. I made a wall of a big decision. I just have to be there at whatever time I'm meant to be there. There's 100 no's made for Sunday night in terms of partying because of what I said yes to for Monday morning. You want me to go out during the week, go and do this, do that, do the next thing? I've already said 100 no's just by saying one big yes. That make sense? We celebrated childbirth this morning. Say yes to having a child. There's 100 small no's said right there already. Say yes to raising this beautiful little human being that's got God's purpose. There's hundreds of no's to a lot of other little things that I might have done previously before that little human being arrived in this world, but I said no's because we made a wall of that decision. As for me and my household, we will serve the Lord equals the same thing. There's hundreds of smaller decisions that involve not serving God that I say no to just by building the wall. Say yes. God, I'm moving forward. Please help me because it's a journey together with you. The second a core issue that we need to settle is this, is we are committed to church community. So saying yes to serving God, the New Testament gives us a picture that Christ is the head of the church, and his church worldwide is his body. You cannot say yes to the head and no to the body. Although because the local church is so frail and so flawed, many people would like to. So Jesus is perfect. I'll say yes to him. His people most definitely are not perfect. No, thank you. But we don't get to make that option because it's all connected. So by building the wall of decision of saying we are, and I'm using we just to go with this pronoun from Joshua, we are committed to church community. If that's an I'm committed to church community. If that's a family thing, we are committed to church community. I heard we're having a discussion this morning about some of the moms' rooms. Our amazing moms' rooms, a discussion earlier this week at least. We've got the most brilliant facilities for feeding moms. And for 12 to 18 months, and 18 to 24 months through there. And then when these little guys get up to 2.5, there are wide open arms welcoming them into the most amazing kids program. But what happens, again by observation, is having a little guy or girl running around in a church is tough on occasion. For those parents sitting in the mom's room, they should be called parents' rooms, as Meg said yesterday, because there's lots of dads, moms, and you're looking after this little bundle of joy and energy and a little bit of God's blessing into my world, but boy, it's tiring. And if I don't have a wall built of we are committed to church community, if it's just a tiny little fence, it just gets blown away by the effort. So it's a whole lot easier for the first 2 years of that human being's life just to stay at home, watch something on TV or listen to a podcast. And then if you have the next kid, then that's another maybe 2 years, and another one, depending on how many you go. If you're like my parents, there's 11 and a half years worth of childbirth in my late mom's world. She would have just been out of church for about 14 years. But along with this decision of we will serve the Lord, they built this wall brick by brick with every additional child had to go and reinforce it, is we are committed to church community. We committed. My dad got so mad the one day at something that happened in the local church that we were part of. I was little, about 6 or 7. I don't know what happened. He told me this when I was older. But he got so frustrated the one day he drove home and he told my mom, I'm done. I've left that church. He was in a leadership position in that church. He just wrote a letter, I'm done. And he tells the story that sometime during that week, I was the oldest child. It was the next Sunday. Now he's chilled. He's at home. There's a crack in his wall that came through some pain. And his oldest little boy happened to me ask him this question, Daddy, why aren't we going to church today? Can I tell you why I asked that question? Is because every other Sunday of my life we had been to church. It was like, well, why aren't we going again? And somehow in that conversation, God reminded him, you didn't just decide to serve me, you decided to be committed to church. He went the next day, tears in his eyes, and apologized to the couple that were leading that church. He didn't come back into the same leadership position. He had burnt a bridge, but he repaired the wall. And from that day forward, every future Sunday, most of them, for the rest of his life, he was committed to church community. It's interesting to me, at the start of each year, I meet new families in town that come through church, and I observe in some behavior that they have built this wall. So it doesn't matter on the town they're living in. It's like we built the wall. If we're going to be involved in a church community, we're looking for a church community to connect into. Because we were involved in that church community, now we're looking for a new one. These are good decisions to make. We're committed into Sunday services. We're committed into community, smaller community, because in a building like this, we don't get to connect with everybody. You can walk in and out and be fairly anonymous if you choose to be. And so it takes a risk to be known. And it's part of this brick wall of putting in a few more bricks and saying, I'm going to be known by some people and connect into a life group setting. I'm going to get involved and I'm going to be connected. The opposite of that is to have no will. Say, well, there's no expectation. Nobody knows me. I'm free. But actually, the best freedom is found by settling those issues, saying, God, I want to live in your purpose. You designed me for community. The third core issue that we need to settle is that we are here, to make a difference. We're here to make a difference. Many Christ followers settle the first one, I'm going to serve God, working on the second one, church community. But this idea, I'm on this world to make a difference. Now, this involves service. This involves sacrifice. This involves effort. What's the opposite of that? Well, no service, no sacrifice, and no effort. And we blob spiritually. When we're not giving anything, when we're not when we're not serving others, it's very, very bad for our spiritual health. We were designed to live and to grow and to do. It's interesting that the human muscles are designed to work and work often. I was in hospital some years back for a stretch of about 9 days in an isolation ward, in bed, just very weak, and I was obviously sick. When I came out of hospital, I was speaking to a physio, and they said what happens even in 9 days of no activity, your muscles start to atrophy. 9 days of not using muscles, they start to weaken. You need to do stuff to get strong again, your muscular system. And it's like that with the muscles of our faith. Is they were designed to work, they were designed to be used, they were designed to serve others. We were designed to be givers, not takers. We were designed to help and to look out for others. If God saw fit to give me birth into this country, when I was born, I had no choice in the matter. God designed it that I was born here. Doesn't mean I'll live here necessarily for the rest of my life. But I was born in South Africa. I'm South African. In this beautiful country of such diversity and such trauma and such beauty and such potential. If I am called by God to live my life on purpose, surely I should be looking around me to say, God, what can I do on purpose? How can I live to make a difference? Can I tread on a few more toes? There's been a big wave of immigration the last little while. Please hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying God isn't moving some people somewhere. Even Abraham, the very father of the faith, was called to leave a country and go to another country. But what he did in his moving, he was following God's call. Okay? He didn't leave out of any kinds of those pressure. It was because God was pulling him, so saying, okay, your purpose here, I'm going to move you to a purpose over there. As Christ followers, if you're a follower of Christ, your number one reason for looking to move anywhere else, another city, another country, anywhere, should be, God, where is your next purpose for me? Surely that's the biggest question related to all of this. And all the noise that's around us in society, all the noise economically, politically, wherever you go in the world, you're going to have noise. Let me say that up front. But the noise isn't the big deal. There's just one voice I need to be looking out for, and that's his voice. Saying, God, is it our time to move? He says, no. Add a few more bricks into the wall of here. And if he says, yes, take the wall with me of I'm going to make a difference, and I'm arriving in a new country to make a difference, not to complain about what I left. Full stop. Some years back, we started an NGO called City Hope. It's changed its name now to Nation Changes, to try and make a bit more of a difference, because we can't change every single situation, but we can start with some. Over the last, I shared some of these figures yesterday, but in 2015, just out of interest, through Nation Changes, NGO that tries to be a hub feeding into the spokes of lots of existing organizations. We had about 75 volunteers involved in 10 different projects being limited in space and time, and about 183,000 Rand came into Nation Changes that year. 2016, we had 400 volunteers involved in 82 different projects. We launched our Nation Changes month idea that year. 673,000 Rand came in to Nation Changes in 2016. In 2017, 635 volunteers in 102 different separate projects, income of 1.15 million Rand. Last year, just about 800 volunteers, 263 different projects, income of just over 2 million Rand. I'd like to say a huge well done and thank you to everybody who's contributing either time or money or both, or faith, saying we get to make a difference. I'm putting that up because that's what we're doing. But there's lots of organizations represented by people in this church. There are amazing things that you are doing as well. Thank God that we get to make a difference. In this idea of making a difference, there's a phrase that you're going to hear a few times in this first quarter and maybe through the rest of the year. But we're asking everybody that considers City Hill to be their church home to take this as their phrase for the year. It's very simple. It's each one, reach one. Okay? When I think of my friends, family, neighbors, colleagues at work, the city, the nations of the earth, how will they come to know of the love of Christ? The billions, well, that might be a problem that flips out some of our switches. But every single one of us, if you've made the decision that as for me and my household, we'll serve the Lord, secondly, we'll be involved in church community, then in terms of making a difference, wouldn't you commit, please, to this year, 2019, saying, so Jackie and I, we're committing each one reach one, so each two would reach two. And what I mean by that is that during this year, somebody that is disconnected from church or does not know Christ, they're not a Christ follower yet, that by the end of the year, they would be connected to this local church or another local church because of our impact into their lives. So I'm looking around January saying, God, please give us people to connect with. Each one reach one, and it might take 5 or 10 different kinds of connections to produce the one that gets connected. But if everybody sits back and says, well, I'm sure somebody else will do that job. I'm sure somebody else will look out for my colleagues at work. I'm sure somebody else will look out for my neighbors. I'm sure well, who's that somebody else if we all say that? Imagine if all of us commit and say, we're here to make a difference in 2019 in many different ways, but in this way particularly, each one reach one. John Piper puts it like this. He says, whatever you do, find the God-centered, Christ-exalting, Bible-saturated passion of your life and find your way to say it and live for it and die for it, and you will make a difference that lasts. You will not waste your life. Number 4 and 5, in terms of having this big decision, settling the core issues, is we need to settle this issue, if we're Christ followers and build that wall, is that we are people of the book. That we're people of the book. Earlier on in the book of Joshua, in fact, in the very first chapter, God says this to Joshua, keep this book of the law, and they just had the first 5 books. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. If I want to live out God's purposes for my life, I need to commit and build a wall that I am a person of the book. Not just attending a church where they preach from the Bible, but I'm committed to understanding and figuring the Bible out for myself. That I've got a commitment to God and to myself that I'm going to figure it out. Now, everybody here is on a slightly different journey when it comes to accessing the Bible. At a very least, could I suggest this, is that you set aside 15 minutes as a minimum amount of time, 15 minutes a day, to connect with God and dive into His Word. Now, having done that, you might speak to people around you with the vast amount of ideas available online. find some kind of different Bible reading option that might work for you. If you have a smartphone or some connection to the internet, which most people do, there is an app which I'd like to just highly recommend. It's called YouVersion. Many of you have downloaded it. Others might not. It's been designed by a church in the US called Life Church. It's led by a guy named Craig Groeschel. And I heard Craig Groeschel speaking about this app, and he said their driving force behind launching this, it's a free app by the way, is he said the passion of their church and their organization is to eliminate biblical hunger, or biblical, what is this phrase? Poverty. Eliminating Bible poverty around the world. So you can find a whole lot of different versions of the Bible on that app. But for those that are very visual learners, if you find the videos tab, there are some amazing videos explaining books of the Bible. For example, we were on holiday and Levi was reading through the book of Galatians, one chapter a day. And Galatians is a fractionally tricky book in the New Testament. And so I asked him, do you understand what you're reading? He said, not really. So we went online and found the Bible Project video of the book of Galatians, which is also connected in through this app. And it's just a 6.5-minute video explaining the book of Galatians, but with like a cartoon type drawing, but it's not for kids cartoon. It's a pictorial representation of Galatians. And then I went and found the video on the book of Revelation, 2 videos. I watched those videos, I think, 10 or 20 times personally. Studying the book of Revelation, I had such fresh insight into that tricky book. But it starts with the decision of saying, I'm a person of the book. There's 1,187 chapters in this Bible. I'm not going to read that all in a single day, so I've got to be devoted to the exercise of reading the Bible, finding a plan that works for me. The best plan for most people is not start at the beginning and finish at the end, drop in at a few different places, perhaps simultaneously. But this is how the psalmist writes about the word of God. He says, I rejoice in following your statutes, as one rejoices in great riches. I meditate on your precepts and consider your ways. I delight in your decrees. As God didn't give us this as a dry, dusty book just to be read and the guy who wrote it in Psalm 119 said, I delight in your word. You can't get to that point if you've never read the word. Try to understand, allow it to become part of your life. Have you built the wall that for the rest of your life, you're a person of the book and going to try and understand it and figure it out and build your knowledge about the Bible bit by bit? And if at the moment you have no hunger or thirst for that, do you know that you can ask God for that too? Say, God, help me to understand your word. When I read it, I just can't. Please give me fresh eyes to see. Help me to understand it. And the fifth and final wall that we get to build is this idea is that we are people of prayer. We're people of prayer. Let's not start by talking about how much we should pray, because every single one of us could pray more. But this basic idea that prayer is speaking to God. And if I've decided to serve God, be involved with this community, I'm committed to pray, committed to talking to God. And that might be during that 15-minute time that you sit alone saying, God, here I am. I'm not going to ask anyone to raise their hands here, but how many people, because don't raise your hand, please, but this is the question, how many people you really, really, really struggle to pray out loud? Like that would be the most awkward thing. If it was 10 people around the table, you get asked to say the grace. That would be a fate worse than death for you. That is a common fear that people have, by the way, praying out loud. It's a common fear that many Christ followers have. Do you know the first step to breaking that fear and walking, that is to praying out loud by yourself with God. Driving along, sitting alone, having a devotion, going for a walk, and talking to God. And because he's invisible, that's what makes it usually the awkward part. Is like, it looks like I'm talking to myself. But as I understand that the God of the universe is with me, and he teached us to pray, our Father who is in heaven, I can start like that. And if you don't have any other words for prayer, why not use the Lord's Prayer? Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. God, this sounds really awkward. This feels really, really awkward talking to you as Father, but our Father, I love you, Father. Thank you for looking out for me. Thank you for looking out for us. I hallow your name. You're great and you're in heaven. And I'm on earth. And just that idea of thinking puts me in a better position because I'm understanding that God's in heaven and I art on earth. And if you take those lines of the Lord's Prayer and use them, you'd be able to pray a whole lot of different things that might not just come if you're just, what do I say next? May your kingdom come, etc. I want to teach through that whole thing, the whole prayer this morning, but that we commit to this idea we are people of prayer, and having settled that, we look for opportunities to pray personally and in family and with others. That we look for as it fits and as we've got our faith for that we are people of prayer. I'd like to, having spoken about these as personal walls, just give you a little bit of feedback regarding some of our church plans for 2019 and things to look forward to and places to click in. I'd like to kick off just with this guide that you were given on your way in. If you didn't get one of these guides, it's labeled Engage at the top, but put your hand up is the theme. Wouldn't you just put your hand up? And we'll get the put your hand up brochure into your hand. Some of our friendliest, fastest people. In this brochure, the reason that we've written it, and if you unfolded it, stretched, concertinaed out, it's got writing on both sides. We're giving a little bit of a snapshot view into some of the different areas of the life of this church. Next week, Sunday, we're going to be inviting you, if you're not yet involved in any area of service, or you're keen to get involved in a life group, we'll explain a little more of those things next week. But this is this is the appetizer, if you like. It's for you to take and read at home, if you'd like to. The first page, which says you don't need skills, just love, is City Serve. That relates to all of the different serving opportunities available here on Sundays. And we've got about 1,300 odd spaces in a month for people to serve. It's the most beautiful thing. City groups, life is best done together. Just a story there about life groups. On any of these, incidentally, if you don't want to wait for next week, Sunday, you could get online and sign up or find out more through all of our online stuff. City Hill Kids is the next block. Children are important to us. You know, while we're meeting here, if you're a parent, we've got a few hundred children in that 3-story block that's adjacent to this building, being taught by a team of 5 or 6 staff members, and there are about 100 odd volunteers. We need, again, say this next week, we need about 20 or 30 more volunteers into our City Hill Kids space. I'd like to suggest that everybody volunteering there, all the adults, are growing even more in their faith than the kids that they are imparting to. And our children have the privilege of being not just looked after, taught, explained, trained, help them build their own walls through an incredibly committed team. City Teach relates to the training courses that we do, happen mostly on a Monday evening. On the reverse side of this brochure are the things that are the going out bits, if I could say. Nation Changes is the one that says restore, rebuild, renovate. I'm avoiding naming colors because Jackie is completely convinced I'm colorblind, and I give something a color, I call it red, and she comes up with this fancy name for it that I didn't even know existed. So the next one is City Hope, and it's got a circle of a particular color that has a fancy name. But this is another NGO, separate NGO that responds to crisis, disaster relief type situations. And then City Reach are our in-house trips that are going out all over the place. Geordie shared about some of those at our Vision Weekend. But we've got 32 odd trips planned for this year, most of them cross-border trips, Swaziland, Lesotho, southern Mozambique, and some nations further afield. The reason that we put it in a format like this is it's impossible to cover everything all at once, and different things might appeal to different people. But it's the start of a new year. I've spoken this morning about settling some core issues. And the things I've mentioned, they're the big deal. I'm getting stuck in, I'm serving God, I'm a person of the book, I'm a person committed to prayer. And what was my second one? Serving God, here to make a difference, point number 3. And I'm here to make a difference. If I've settled those things, then after that it just becomes a matter of how and where. I had a lady come to me yesterday at our Vision Week, and I was really blessed by what she said. She's here this morning. She said over the last 2 weeks or so, she's been praying about where they as a family should serve this year. I know that they're very involved already. They're serving. But she's saying at the start of this year, I'm just asking God, any shifts, any changes, what do you want me to do? And an interesting thing, she said in prayer, she just had a phrase jump into her mind, and it was this phrase, each one reach one. So you've got this Engage guide. I've shared some of those things. Where and how and what are you going to get involved with this year related to the local church? And I know that many people are doing other things that are not listed on here. We get to follow God. We get His guidance regarding all of these things. Just some other things to look forward to as I bring this in for a landing. In the second term this year, we're going to be running the Alpha Course. Alpha Course is, over a couple of decades, been an incredible tool for people who are exploring Christianity, often for the first time, get to have asked and answered the questions related to some of the things around the claims of Jesus and what we believe and teach, etc. If you've got any friends that are completely, they've just got questions, that would be something to put in the calendar. Alpha Course in term 2. Third term, we're running, of course, the Flourish Women's Conference. And then this term, in 3 weeks' time, we're starting a series that we are calling Detox. So, just a 2-minute comment about this. How many people were here for the Transform series we did 2 years ago? Fantastic. How many were part of Better Together that we did last year? Brilliant. The last 2 years, what we did was we actually borrowed a 6-week church-wide campaign series from another church, from Saddleback Church. And the midweek DVDs that we listened to were by Rick Warren. It was some really great content. And there's a lot of hard work that goes into making those. But this year, we've decided to do our own series. In exactly the same way. We've been working on this since somewhere around June or July. And I'll tell you what's been done, and we are busy finishing off. For those 6 weeks, on Sunday morning, so when you arrive week 1 of the Detox series, you'll be given a 40-day devotional with space in each of the 6 weeks to fill in the notes from Sunday's message. And then the 6 weeks of the life group DVDs, the fill-in words. It's all in one book that we'll give out to everybody. We have written that devotional ourselves. Those 40 devotional days, they've been written in-house. In November, we recorded all 6 of those DVD sessions. So in our life groups, right across the church for 6 weeks, starting on the 10th of Feb, you'll get part A of week 1 Sunday morning, and part B is the Detox DVD. So the subjects that we're covering through that Detox series, you might be able to see there past my wall, is Detox Your Future, week 1. Detox your body, detox your soul, detox your mind, detox your friendships, and detox your finances. As well as doing that through our existing groups, we are hoping to launch another 50 to 70 groups that do detox, so a 6-week group. The way that will work, and again, I'm going to give a chance to sign up for this next week, but I want to give you a bit of notice. You might be disconnected to a life group, but you've built the walls, you've decided to follow Christ, and you've got some friends. And you're thinking, each one reach one. I could reach maybe 10 because I've got a lot of different friends. Some of them are in church and some are out. You're going to get an opportunity to say, I would like to run a detox group. You'll get some training, and then all the material is provided. There's a leader's guide that's provided as well. All of this has been done in-house. And for those 6 weeks, we are going to be going through it. And you get to invite people into your lounge or into a lounge, into a space, and say, why don't we go on this journey together? We've got these DVDs, and we're going to be looking at the big idea of how do I detox myself so I can live a more healthy, purposeful life the way God designed. The kids team, Nikki said when we came up with the word detox, she didn't know how she was going to teach that to a grade 3 or a 5-year-old. Come and detox your body. So you're hoping not too many of them are in serious need of that just yet. So they've taken the exact same subjects but called it Ready, Set, Go. They are starting that the week before us, I think, and running the same time over those 6 weeks that we go as well. So right throughout the church, we're going to be on this detox series, and as an opportunity for you to invite friends, family, people that might not ordinarily come or just been disconnected from groups into our space. So with detox, you might like to join a group, and we'll do that over the next 2 weeks, or start a group. And again, you'll be given opportunity over the next 2 Sundays. But that's what's coming up in terms of our plan for this first term, our big detox series.